basically allows us as a governing board to have our own rules. But then the second section refers to Sonoma versus Board of Supervisors in 1977, where in that specific case that the Dry Creek people voted ahead of time and were instructed that an abstention in that case would be an affirmative vote. That put aside, I also have concerns because, Chairman, you actually declared it defeated, and then County Council stepped in afterwards with no pre-explanation of that. So these are concerns I have regarding 5.2. And there was other things, but I'll just leave it at that at this time if you want to address things one at a time.
Council?
So the item before the board is approving the minutes. I believe what you're asking for would be a separate agenda item. It wasn't agendized to revisit the vote or discuss the rationale for the vote. What we have to look at when we're looking at the minutes is whether they accurately reflect what occurred at the board meeting. And I would request some additional information from you in terms of what you believe is not accurately reflected in the minutes.
That it carried with my abstention. It's a majority vote, and according to the Rosenberg's rules and our governance manual, I do not see how in this, as a majority vote, when you have 4 people sitting and 1 not present, you would need all 4 ayes. I abstained, so it failed. It didn't carry.
So this is a budget adjustment, requires 4/5 vote, which means it does require 4 of the board members' votes, not 3.
Correct, that's what I just said. And I voted in the abstain, which, according to our governance manual and Rosenberg's, would be a no. So you don't get to pass something with 3 yeses and 1 no.
Correct. Well, not correct, actually. That has been interpreted by case law, which I did provide to the chair at the time, and I did make it available publicly, provided to the CAO, which talks about these very rare occasions where something is, where a vote fails by 1 vote. If one of the board members abstains, for the purpose of that vote, it is counted as an aye. I agree with you, it's a very obscure area of law, which is why I provided the case law for the board to analyze and look at, and I'm happy to provide it again if that's your pleasure. It's ultimately the board's decision how you want to proceed. I just provide you the case law and my analysis of it, and it's your decisions how you want to move forward.
Well, it's interesting how we kind of jump around. So we're following the rule now that applies now. However, we did not apply it when it was actually happening in real time. We were never told ahead of time, number 1. Number 2, the chair declared it defeated. Then you were going to check into it, and you made the phone call back to us, and then there was a motion. You said that only someone from the majority, and you identified the 3 people in the majority, and that I was in a minority. So you put me in a minority, but you count my vote as a yes. So then you declare I can't make a motion. A motion was made, and I wanted to ask a question, but we don't ask questions when there's a motion being made. Then Supervisor Mines had a conversation, and then the motion was withdrawn. So that procedurally was totally incorrect, and that's okay. So it's interesting. It's like when we apply the rules and when we don't. And we clearly did not have any advanced knowledge that an abstention would be a no vote, or a yes vote, excuse me, an affirmative vote. No one on the board knew that. I was not the only one that did not know that. So I feel as county council, we're obligated to tell that beforehand, not afterhand, after it was declared done. Again, I go back. This 5.2, motion Terry Mines, second Judy Mars, and it says it carried. An abstain by Chadwick, me, would mean that it didn't carry. So therefore, this is incorrect on that word saying carried. That's what I am talking about, right there.
And again, it's the board's pleasure. I don't make those determinations. That information, I do assume you've taken a Brown Act training, should have been provided in the Brown Act training in terms of how to proceed when you have votes. We can provide another training if that would be the board's pleasure on the rules and the Brown Act and how they apply. What you're specifically looking at is not Rosenberg's rules, it's the rules that were created by the board. And it does say a supervisor who votes on the prevailing side of the question has the right to do a motion to reconsider. Of course, that would require a second and a vote in order for reconsideration to occur. It's the board's pleasure how you want to interpret it. The prevailing party is typically interpreted as someone who votes in the aye, not someone whose vote is counted as an aye based on the default nature of the legal precedent. However, it's the board's pleasure how you want to proceed. If you guys want to, how you want to proceed, I just give you my opinion on what the law is.
In your perception.
Any more questions before we go to a public?
No.
Any other questions of
No.
council? All right, we'll open it up to the public.
Kate Graves from Lewiston. Thank you, Supervisor Chadwick, for bringing this up. I wish we would have done this when the shenanigans happened with the Hayfork cutout was in, it was out, it was in. Everything Supervisor Chadwick said and brought up, I agree with. I would say that I'd like to badly quote what Mike Ware told you guys a while back. Do you know what happens to attorneys that give bad advice? Nothing. Do you know what happens to their clients? Lots of things, bad things even. So that is why your so-called county counsel gives you her opinion. You take it like it's written in stone and it's actually fact, and then she excuses herself from any liability for what she tells you and says it's all up to you. And that's why she does that. Because when you guys get in trouble for it, she'll go, I just gave him my opinion and some advice. I didn't direct him, I didn't make him do anything. Also, I would say that your citing case law is moot because you don't know what the board's rules were. You know what your rules were. And if you guys want to play games with these things, you do it at your own risk. But you guys should know what you're doing. I know you've dug a really deep hole, and you guys just keep on digging. And I feel kind of bad for you about that because eventually it's going to snap. And you guys will be surprised when it happens, and you'll all be pointing fingers. But you guys need to look in the mirror because you've been told over and over again, and you just keep going. And if you listen with any kind of analysis to what your attorney's saying and how vague it is and nebulous it is, and it just points you in a direction, if you want to go for that, go ahead. I'm not here just nagging you. I mean, it's our money that this is going to. And we want it done legally, literally legally, following the law. And every time you guys dig, you're not paying to get out of this. We are. And I'd like you guys to take that into consideration. Thank you.
No other public comment? We'll come back to the board.
Motion to approve minutes as presented.
You recuse yourself during that one, you don't have the right to do that.
That's enough.
It's true.
One more time and we'll ask you to leave, so please, you know the rules, follow them. All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask, this is a roll call. I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Supervisor Morris?
Yes.
Supervisor Finley?
Yes.
Supervisor Chadwick?
No.
Supervisor Mines?
Yes.
Supervisor Groves?
No. It passed, yes. All right, item 2.1. Adopt a resolution which authorizes the clerk, recorder, assessor to submit a grant application for funding to procure information technology systems and software. Potential grant funding in the amount of $750,000 with a match in the assessor's budget of $375,000. John, you got a question?
My question is what is this? There is nothing in the backup talking about this. I understand that the software is getting out of date. I also understand that the assessor, the auditor, and the tax collector use it, but I don't think that's what this is. But the other thing I don't understand is that her budget for 2017-18 for assessor was $335,000, so she's spending $40,000 more than what her budget is. So either you guys have already decided that she's going to get twice the amount of money for this year's budget, or she's having no operating costs for her office this coming year. So none of this really makes sense to me, so, you know, I don't know, you guys haven't done a budget hearing yet, so I don't know if you're planning on giving her $600,000 for this office, or actually $700,000 for this office. So, and I'd like to know what the hardware and software is for $1,125,000.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Two questions, Shannon. We'll have you. What is the software? We've had this discussion before, but
Well, the current software that the county is using is Crest. It's an archaic software that's being used. It was originally created for like 9 or 10 counties. There's only 3 counties left on it, very small counties. They're a small mom and pop company. This grant is money that the state has put out, and in my summary it basically explains that, you know, the state is saying that, you know, the local governments gain by counties being able to have a suffice system to be able to accurately and efficiently assess properties. So that's what this grant is for, and it's a 2-for-1 match. So for every $1 we spend, they give us $2.
okay. And then I'll go ahead and answer the other part, is that we have passed a preliminary budget, and this money to purchase this system, to upgrade it, is in that. This would actually save the county what's already budgeted, and we'll go through budget hearings, the $375,000, which would come back to the county. Any other questions from the board? All right. Any other public comment? With hearing none, we'll entertain a motion. This is a roll call. Oh, I'll still need a motion.
Yep, I'll make a motion to approve 2.10 county clerk, clerk, recorder, assessor as presented.
I second.
All right, this is a resolution, please. Roll call.
Supervisor Myers?
Aye.
Supervisor Finley?
Yes.
Supervisor Chadwick?
Aye.
Supervisor Morris?
Yes.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Since we have a 10 o'clock public hearing, we are going to go to reports from department heads.
Noel O'Neill from Behavioral Health. Just wanted to update you on 2 things. One is the contract that you approved this morning with Aegis. That is going to allow Trinity County residents who have Medi-Cal to be able to access methadone treatment down in Redding. So those individuals who may have a battle going on with heroin and have an addiction and need an intervention. In the past, the closest resource was Chico. Aegis was operating there, but they have a hub and spoke model now where they're offering this service in Redding. Because Trinity County Behavioral Health is a certified provider of drug Medi-Cal services with Department of Health Care, we are required to provide 5 services, 2 of which are medication-assisted treatment. One is the methadone, and the other is a resource for persons who have alcohol kinds of concerns, and that would be naltrexone. So both of those services will be available in Redding at no cost to the beneficiary, although they would have to travel down. That travel can also be arranged through Partnership Health, so that if they call 3 days ahead of time, they can get that travel taken care of by Partnership Health. The other thing I wanted to update you on is that The ANOVA for No Place Like Home has come out in August, and Trinity County is very interested in responding, hopefully in the first round. We know that beginning this year, actually I'm not positive whether it's in 1819 or 1920, the state will begin taking 7% of Mental Health Services Act dollars off the top of that revenue and putting it aside into a trust to pay the bond for No Place Like Home. Small rural counties are guaranteed $500,000 in non-competitive funding plus $75,000 in technical support. So we've already received the $75,000 and we've used a portion of that for a grant writer. A portion of that we have set aside for A87 costs, and a portion went to Rural Community Housing Development Corporation, who is an outfit out of Ukiah who does quite a bit of development for especially rural counties for housing. And so they are working with us to develop a feasibility and financial plan. And if we like their plan down the road, we would come back to you with a contract where they would actually do a development. Additionally, as you know, we also have a MOU with Partnership Health, and they have guaranteed Trinity County $190,000 in housing dollars. So we have a little more than $700,000 to use to work with our CHDC, and our hope is to be able to use that revenue to not only obtain the non-competitive pot, but the competitive RFA will also be coming out, and counties are awarded points for how much revenue they have set aside in their application. And so it may be that we're going to be able to apply for the competitive element. So it's a step-by-step process, but I just wanted you to know the note is out, and as a county, we are putting our heads together, the CAO's office, Department of Transportation, Behavioral Health, Health and Human Services, to try to make something happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Other department heads? Rick, you're supposed to have a report. CUPs?
I don't have it with me, sorry.
And we did request that of you at the last meeting, right?
My apologies, don't have it.
Okay. All right. Any other department heads? No? All right, CAO.
I've got the report this time.
Okay. Members of the board, we'll start with Mr. Mines.
I have nothing to report.
Mr. Finley.
Out of county travel, the 9th traveled to Chico for Nortec for their executive board meeting.
Okay.
That's it.
Supervisors.
Supervisor Finley, RCRC.
Oh, yes, I did go to RCRC also.
Okay. Supervisor Chadwick.
I joined Supervisor Finley in RCRC, and we also had a vote for the Golden State banking stuff. And then on last week, I don't remember which one, SCUT, which is the Superior California Economic Development, and they came out with a flyer. I would like to, I believe I sent it to Dr. Coons this morning. I'd like to see that distributed throughout. It includes small business loans and a no-fee $5,000 quick response loan for business impacted by the Carr and Klamath fires. And we are included in this emergency response. So if there's some way that we can distribute this out to the people of Trinity County. So it would include physical damage, business interruption, if people had reduced sales due to the fire. It would help pay rent, payroll, inventory. There's quite a few things that this money can be applied for. So I don't know how to to get it out there, so
Would you feel this is something that we should have a presentation here at the board?
I think it'd be worth our time to do that, yes, sir.
Is there a deadline to apply?
It's just come out,
Okay.
and so deadlines were spoken of at the meeting, but they weren't clear. So I'm sure Mr. Nash would send someone,
Okay.
if that's what you request. I think it's worth our time.
All right. Mr. Coons, I think that would be appropriate to have that as soon as possible to get a presentation here. I am getting a lot of questions from business people.
And you also asked me to look into FEMA too, so
Right.
it's going to be both.
Yes, sounds great. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Ms. Morris?
Not a county travel, but we did have a productive collaborative meeting on Friday. I got a quick presentation on what is known as the First 48, as a major project in Supervisor Bentley's district that will start moving forward. We'll have a presentation to the board on that project as well. I don't quite remember the number, but quite a bit of board feet will come out of that project. So, and this is a Six Rivers project, so we'll have Dan in front of us soon.
Fantastic. Little comment on that is hopefully we'll have a road in place and repaired and maintained to get that timber out of there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty bad shape. Rick. I see the head nodding, but
Okay.
yeah, okay.
All right, I had no out-of-county travel. But as the fire cleanup begins, and unfortunately we had more houses that were burnt than we originally thought. So we'll keep working to try to help those lives in the Lewiston area. All right, on to the state cannabis legislation. Anything new?
A couple of things are moving forward, so nothing has, sorry, John.
Go for it.
Nothing has been confirmed yet, and I had a quick note, I don't have that in front of me, but some things are bubbling to the surface, but we'll see what happens in the next few weeks as the session starts to end.
Okay. Permanent commercial cannabis ordinance.
As we heard earlier in public comment, the transport, only the self-transport issue is in front of the ad hoc, and there has been some changes. I don't know if the applications to one of them is up yet. We are investigating both, so you will, if there's changes or modifications that need to happen, and you'll see it on the board.
And we also have updated versions of the cultivation ordinance, hopefully going to the PC soon.
Right, thank you, right. Those amendments we discussed to manufacturing, I believe it was last board meeting, are slated to go to the PC, I think the first meeting in September. Yeah, Leslie's shaking her head, so those amendments that we sent to be looked at the PC will be in front of them in September.
Okay.
And then, so cleanup and cultivation, as you pointed out, Supervisor Groves, transport only, self-transport, and then eventually, after that, we will be tackling retail.
All right, new jail, detention, anything?
Nothing new, still on track, last time I reported.
Okay.
I have a quick question. When did you say those bids were going out?
Refer that to Rick, they're going out.
Still waiting for Department of Finance.
Oh,
Okay, COP refinancing, anything new?
No, Terry's not here, so I'll get the report on that.
Budget development?
All the narratives are in from the departments that have submitted them. Susan's been working on that to get them to me either later this week or early next week, and we're on track for our mid-September budget hearings.
And wilderness oversight, we will discuss that later.
I have a quick question for CAO. Supervisor Groves alluded to it as well as Supervisor Chadwick in the item she raised. Contributing to this, business downturn that we're experiencing from the fires. It's our first fire. It's not our first road issue. I think county businesses have certainly taken a hit over quite a few years. CAO, could you bring to us, and of course we're dealing with the smoke that is suffocating the region, if not the whole West Coast. Can you look into, maybe this is an OES question, what acres were considered not directly from the wildfire, but from what is known as fire operations or backburning, not to be confused with preventative, proactive prescribed burning, which is helpful, and sometimes backburning is necessary, but I'd like to know what gets reported in the media is total acreage. We don't know what is considered part of the backburn acreage versus complete, just straightforward wildfire.
Okay, so just clarify, so you want to differentiate between what nature
Yes.
consumed and what
Right.
will be, okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's not getting reported that way, and typically doesn't, but a lot of the smoke tends to be, from what I understand, from that. And they cut a real wide box when they want to go throw some additional fire to the issue, so.
Yes, I know.
Thank you.
All right, now we have a 10 o'clock public hearing. We will take a break until 10:02.
No.
Supervisor Bennett?
No.
Supervisor Groves?
No. Now on to the original. Yes.
Supervisor Chadwick?
I,
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
Supervisor Morris?
No.
Supervisor Wines?
No.
Supervisor Groves?
Yes. So with that, I would direct staff to, John, do you feel that Hayfork's far enough south, or would you like us to go a little farther south?
Probably Canton Palm would be a good place to start. Oh, people need to drive the road to get to Canton Palm. I got all 5 supervisors to drive there. So,
Trying to be serious. If you
I am serious, but we
want us to go to Kenton Palm, I'll go to Kenton Palm. I haven't been there in a while. So.
I'm going this afternoon if anybody wants to ride.
You can get to the San Francisco toll bridge.
This is something we probably should talk about, figuring out what we want to do with it, and we're going to have to let Congressman Huffman's office know what our plans are,
Right.
and also where the money's going to come from and to do this. Since all 5 supervisors are being included, I've settled with Ruth, but
As of now, the ad hoc come back with some recommendations.
Well,
Thank you.
that's fine, but we do need to do this sooner than later because this will be in committee, or is it in committee?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, John, I'm going to bring you up one more time and explain the process in Washington for us. And what's
That's a loaded question.
What's supposed to happen and not, you know, what, just, he is.
Sure. You know, even if we had a majority at this point, there's no way we would get this through this year. There's just not enough time in the legislative calendar to get it through. So the idea would be that we would reintroduce it sometime next year, possibly with changes if that makes sense. If the House turns to the Democrats, it could get a committee hearing. It's not a highest priority probably on anybody's radar other than the congressman's, but it could get a committee hearing there where you'd have testimony on either side, and it would go through the usual process of markup and all that, and then of course there'd have to be a companion bill in the Senate for that as well. So I know that Senator Feinstein and Harris's offices are considering that. Those two bills would have to then be normalized with each other, and then if there's a possibility for passage there, we'd go to the president. I found it a little bit interesting, Mr. Wall's statement that the president would sign this bill. I am not in any way certain that the president wants to do anything for my boss at all. So I'm not so sure that I'm worried about it. My guess is that we're actually probably still a few years out before something like this could even get passed.
So we'll take one step at a time. So the spring, what does the spring mean in Washington? And the cherries bloom?
But yeah, well, these days you never know. But I mean, the spring is, everybody starts to submit bills at the time, reintroducing it to new Congress, of course. So, those things get prioritized by whatever party is in control in either house. So it's not a fast process, is what it comes down to for something like this.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm looking for a target date to start, a time to get you information.
Sure, I mean, I'd
I'd
say
So
that.
this would take place during the winter time.
Sure, and I mean, when we made a number of changes just recently, I would just say that it takes a long time to make those changes. And we have to actually craft the legislative language, we have to work with legislative counsel, we have to deal with committee staff, and they offer their input on that kind of thing. So I would just say that, the sooner you can get us, the information, the better, just so that we have time to work on that. But again, this isn't a lightning round here, so.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you for your candor, John.
And then so, yes, the ad hoc will take it, and then we'll come back to the board with some ideas which you guys were to meet, and if it's more than one or what we want to do. All right? Yeah, I've totally lost my agenda out here. Thank you, everyone, for coming on this time. All right, and we have, I think we're to closed session. When I read this off. So closed session 6.1 Government Code Section 54954.5, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Number of cases: 1, Pena versus Trinity County, Superior Court Case 18CV053. 6.2 Government Code Section 54954, Public Employee Evaluation, Road Commissioner. 6.3 Government Code Section 5494.5F, Conference with Labor Negotiators, Counties Designated Representative Dave Prentice, Sophie Mayer, and Shelley Nelson. Employee Unit Organizations, Deputy Sheriff's Association, Probation, Peace Officers, skilled trade units, management and confidential unit, and general unit. Anybody have any comment on closed session? All right, we will take a short break while we clean the room. Thank you.
Clean that room.